folks, once again it is Donnie coming at you with a bit of commentary here about a recent event that's been happening in the world of Linux, and that's the fact that the Red Hat company has decided to discontinue CentOS Linux as we know it. Now, some of you might be saying, if you're newbies especially, you might be saying, okay, Donnie, what is CentOS Linux? Well, CentOS is a free of charge clone of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And Red Hat, of course, is like the 800-pound gorilla in the world of Enterprise Linux. And in fact, they're like a $1 billion company. I don't know. They might even be $2 billion by now. I haven't really kept up with them. I just know that a few years ago they did reach the $1 billion mark. But CentOS is a project that used to be independent, and they got started up, I think it was in 2004 if I remember correctly, and all they did was they took the source code for Red Hat Enterprise Linux and they stripped out the Red Hat branding and they just recompiled it into their own distro, which is all perfectly legal because Red Hat, even though it's a for-profit company, and even though it's perfectly legal for them to sell the Red Hat Enterprise Linux for a profit, in order to comply with the free, and I mean free as in speech, not as in beer, licensing under which Linux is licensed, they have to provide the source code and allow anybody who wants to download it and use it however they want. That's just the way the free as in speech software works, okay? And free, again, I need to reiterate, does not mean that you can't charge money for it. It just means that you have to respect the user's freedom to use the software, to modify it, and to distribute it however they want to. So they have to make the source code available in order to comply with that. And you might think that Red Hat would have been upset back then that CentOS was in existence. Well, no, they weren't really, because CentOS, it kind of helped them out. And a lot of people learned Red Hat Enterprise Linux by using CentOS, free of charge, right? Otherwise, they would have to pay Red Hat for a license in order to learn the Red Hat, and a lot of times that was impractical. And besides that, every other distro out there you can get free of charge, and they would have lost, I think, probably some market share had CentOS not been out there in order to help people learn the Red Hat technologies. And there are good reasons for enterprises wanting to use Red Hat type distros. And oh, by the way, I forgot to show you. There's the CentOS website, and of course there's the Red Hat website. But there are a lot of good reasons that enterprises would want to use Red Hat type distros, whether that be CentOS or something else, Oracle Linux, for example. That's another clone of Red Hat Enterprise. But the main reason is security, because the Red Hat type distros have the best default security configuration of any Linux distro out there. And so, for example, if you're in an enterprise and you are serious about wanting to prevent attackers coming in and exploiting your servers, then SE Linux is a great technology. With Red Hat type distros, SE Linux is already there and set up by default. Also, Red Hat type distros already have a firewall set up by default. And something that no other distro has at all is that with Red Hat distros, the user's home directories are already locked down by default. So only that user only the owner of a particular home directory can get into it. So with all other distros out there, all other distro families out there, I mean, you can lock them down, you can make them secure, but you have to jump through some hoops to do it. With Red Hat, you already got it. So that's a big time saver for administrators. And again, CentOS was making it possible for people to actually learn all of these Red Hat type technologies. And so people would use the CentOS then, to learn the Red Hat, and oftentimes they would go out into the corporate world and they'd maybe recommend buying Red Hat, hooking up with Red Hat. So yeah, they were getting business like that, right? Now, was Red Hat also losing business? Well, yeah, some, because there are a lot of servers, a lot of companies, a lot of hosting services that use CentOS instead of Red Hat, because they don't need to pay for that support contract that comes with Red Hat. They have their own in-house people and their own in-house administrators, so they just go ahead and go with CentOS free of charge rather than paying for Red Hat, right? And hey, in fact, quite a few years ago, back in the CentOS 5 days, I was involved with training a couple of different large corporations on how to use CentOS 5, right? So yeah, that happens. But for the most part, I think it was actually better for Red Hat that CentOS was out there free of charge, right? But anyway, they have announced that is now going to come to an end. And so CentOS 8, which was supposed to be supported until on into mid-2029, support for it will now be ended at the end of 2021. So they're cutting like 8 years off of the support life of CentOS 8. So now you've got a situation where you got a lot of people out there who are depending upon CentOS 8. They've got their servers and everything running on CentOS 8, and now all of a sudden they're cut off, right? Like, what in the world is going on? So I can imagine that's going to alienate some customers. Now, will it alienate enough customers to send Red Hat a message? Probably not, because I think we've seen that a lot of customers will put up with a whole lot of really bad stuff. They'll get put up with a whole lot of really bad mistreatment. I mean, look at Apple. Look at the way Apple treats their customers. Oh, we got a butterfly keyboard on the new MacBooks, and they just keep breaking. You get a little speck of dust under them and they break, right? So what's Apple do? Oh, well, that was your fault. You're using it wrong. You got a speck of dust. You need to keep it cleaner than that. Like, what? And then they charge people to replace the keyboards. Then it wasn't until long afterwards they finally admitted, okay, yeah, we got a problem. I guess we'll replace them under warranty, right? But yeah, people still buy Apple products. Why? I don't know. And it's going to be the same way here. People are still going to be buying Red Hat, okay? And of course, a lot of customers, they're already Red Hat to begin with, so they don't care, right? But even the ones who are on Red Hat, I mean, they're going to have developers. A lot of them are going to have developers who are using CentOS because they can develop on CentOS and then deploy the apps on Red Hat. Now, without CentOS, each one of those developers is going to have to get a developer account. You can get a free developer account from Red Hat, but you can't really do anything with it. You can compile software with it, and that's it. I mean, if you need to set up a test server or something like that, you can't do that with the Red Hat developer subscription. So So yeah, even the developers, they're going to be hurting because of this. So anyway, why are they doing this? Well, the answer is kind of obvious. They want to force people to leave the free CentOS. They want to try to force them to buy a subscription from Red Hat. Okay, they want to start forcing these people to pay. Now, yeah, okay, there is going to be CentOS Stream. I forgot to mention that. There's going to be something called CentOS Stream still. But that's not going to be a production-ready type of operating system. It's going to be kind of like the unstable branch of Debian. And, they're going to be using it to as a test bed for what they want to put into Red Hat. And it kind of makes you say, well, what's the point, What's the point? They already got Fedora. That's what Fedora is for. But anyway, so they're telling people either to switch over and buy a Red Hat subscription or switch over to CentOS Stream. But CentOS Stream is not going to be suitable for mission-critical enterprise use, especially considering that CentOS Stream, even though most of the technologies are in it, are going to be previews of what's to come in official Red Hat. If you read these articles, one thing that really stands out is that they're not going to do security patches for CentOS Stream until those patches have already come out in Red Hat Enterprise. So you're going to be running with CentOS Stream basically a distro that's always going to be behind on its security patches. Okay, so so what in the world are they thinking, right? Well, anyway, Red Hat, of course, all this has come about, this whole controversy has come about, of course, because the Red Hat a few years ago bought CentOS. And they promised that, hey, we're not going to change anything. We're just going to give the CentOS product more credibility, more resources, all that. And then they turn around and do this. Okay, well, why did they do this? Well, you know what? I completely forgot about something here. I forgot. It's because, I think, because of this company. Okay? Because last year, in 2019, IBM bought Red Hat. Listen, I'm telling you, IBM, I don't know how they still even exist. Because they got this bad habit of making really, really stupid marketing decisions. And back in the 90s, back when Microsoft was pushing this really, really horrid operating system called Windows 3.1. Oh, horrible. I hated Windows 3.1. IBM had OS2 Warp, which was way better. All right? And when I finally got a computer that was capable of running a graphical operating system, yeah, I installed DOS and then Windows 3.1, and I hated it so much that I went ahead and bought a copy of OS2, installed that, and I never looked back, okay? And, of course, this is the pre-Linux days, so Linux wasn't an option at the time. But OS2 Warp, great operating system. But IBM completely botched the marketing of it, right? For one thing, they wanted to build this proprietary system that everybody would have to license from them. So when they built the original IBM PC, they used open standards. So they used like an ISA bus and all that stuff that anybody could copy. And that's the whole reason why the IBM PC and their clones took over the computing world, right? Because up until that time, there were so many competing standards for computers. You had the Apple IIs and the TRS-80s and the Ataris and on and on and on. Lots of different competing standards. So IBM, by using open standards for the IBM PC, they took over the computing world. But then they said, oh, wait a minute, we got all these other people using our technology for free of charge. We need to do something about that. So that's when they came up with the PS2, which used a proprietary microchannel bus and proprietary hard drive interfaces. And they told the rest of the computing world, all the other computer manufacturers, hey, if you want to use our technology, our microchannel bus, you need to pay us a license fee. Guess what? Hardly anybody did. Instead, the rest of the computing world just invented their own competing standards, their own competing technologies. So instead of using microchannel, they invented ESA and then Visa Local Bus. All free of charge for anybody to use, for any computer manufacturer to use, no licensing fees. So that left IBM in the dust. And OS/2 was also part of that. And they designed OS/2 mainly to run on IBM computers. It would run on non-IBM computers, but you had to be really, really careful when you bought the hardware to build that computer, because that's what I did. I built my own 486. But you had to be real careful about the hardware you buy, because OS/2 supported such a narrow range of hardware devices. And, I knew several guys who tried to install OS/2 on their own computers. They couldn't do it because the installation CD did not have the drivers for their specific CD drives. So they couldn't install it, right? And so basically, if you wanted a computer with OS/2 on it and you didn't want something from IBM, you had to be really, really careful about shopping for your computer and for your components to make sure you would get something that OS/2 would install on, right? So they completely botched that. And the same thing with Lotus. They bought Lotus at one point. They just bought Lotus development, lock, stock, and barrel. And at the time, Lotus had a really nice Office suite, which I used. And but basically, IBM just finally gave up on it. They finally gave up on it and just discontinued it, right? And so now, fast forward to 2019, and I saw the news about IBM buying Red Hat, and I said, yeah, they're going to do something really boneheaded. I just know it. And it looks like they have, okay? Or I'm guessing. I don't know. Maybe it was the Red Hat people who made this decision about CentOS. I don't know. But to me, this is kind of like has the fingerprints of IBM all over it. Okay, this is the type of thing that IBM would do. But anyway, back over here, it says good to the ZDNet article. It says goodbye CentOS, hello Rocky Linux. Okay, so what that is referring to is that one of the original developers of the CentOS project has announced that he is going to start another new project called Rocky Linux. Now, yeah, kind of a strange name, except that if you know the history, right? One of the other co-founders of the CentOS project, his name was Rocky. And unfortunately, he passed away. And so the guy who's founding this new project, he's just calling it Rocky Linux after that developer's honor. But anyway, so you got The Rocky Linux, yeah, Greg Kurtzner. So, CEO and founder at Control Command, a high-performance computer startup, said, I was just as shocked as the rest of the community with the news from Red Hat. When I started CentOS 16 years ago, I never imagined the incredible reach and impact it would have around the world on individuals and companies who rely on CentOS for Linux distribution. And of course, you can continue reading the article there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see there a list of just some of the companies that depend on CentOS. I can add to that Sears Holdings and a streaming video company called SeaChange, because they're the companies where I helped train their personnel. But anyway, so anyway, now this guy, he's going to start this Rocky Linux project in order to replace CentOS. And, it makes good sense. And also, somebody else, Project Linux, another CentOS fork, announced by the Cloud Linux team. So, yeah. And I haven't really read this article, so I don't know how this is going to differ from Greg Kurtzner's Rocky Linux effort. But there you got it. And they said they hope to have an exact binary compatible with the current RHEL 8 stable by first quarter 2021, which is a real optimistic target because they got to set up the infrastructure and all that. And also, there's already Oracle Linux. Oracle Linux is free of charge. Also a clone of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So, if you know CentOS, if you know Red Hat, you can use the free of charge Oracle. And another reason why I think this is kind of a boneheaded move by Red Hat, to discontinue CentOS, is because Oracle also sells support contracts. So how many angry customers are going to switch from Red Hat over to Oracle? Or how many people or companies or businesses are going to start out with CentOS and then instead of switching over to Red Hat when they decide that they need a support contract, they're going to switch over to Oracle instead. I mean, come on, people, use your brains. It's not that hard. This isn't that hard to understand. And in fact, over here, we can look at the Oracle Linux blog, and Oracle saying, hey, you need a stable RHEL-compatible alternative to CentOS? Here are 3 reasons to consider Oracle Linux. And free to download and distribute for more than 14 years, compatible and enhanced, and designed for all workloads. And of course, as does CentOS, it has all the Red Hat goodness with the security features, the SE Linux pre-configured firewall, and locked down user home directories. So, yeah. There you have it. All right. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I'd love to know your thoughts about this. I know a lot of you are going to say, yeah, we're going to switch to something else. And yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Switch to Debian, switch to Ubuntu, switch to Arch. Yeah, that's all fine. Those are all valid options. Except if you're already committed to the Red Hat type ecosystem, then yeah, you probably want to switch over to another Red Hat type distro. And also, if you want the default security of the Red Hat type systems, then yeah, those other distros, might not be a good choice. I mean, yeah, as I said, you can harden them, and you can jump through hoops to harden them and all that, and make them secure. Make them as secure as what Red Hat is, but with the Red Hat type distros, Oracle Linux, CentOS, and I'm assuming Rocky Linux and that Linux are all going to be the same way. You've already got that stuff done by default. Okay, it's already done for you, so it does save you a little bit of work. All right. So anyway, that's it for that. And I have to mention that this video has been brought to you by my sponsor, which is me, and my book, Mastering Linux Security and Hardening, 2nd edition. And I don't know how to get rid of that little banner there. I guess I got to sign in. There we go. So yeah, Mastering Linux Security and Hardening, 2nd edition. And if you are an administrator or a budding administrator, or if you're studying for some sort of a Linux security exam, this book can help you out. So, and oh, look at that. It's on sale. It's on sale right now. Yeah, so good time to get it, right? But anyway, yeah, it covers Ubuntu and CentOS 8 and CentOS 7 too. So yeah, it's as I say, it's going to help you out. Okay, help you out. Make your Linux servers just as secure and hardened as possible. All right. So anyway, that's pretty much all I got. Oh yeah, and the purchase link for this will be in the description below. So be sure to check it out. So anyway, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and share out the video. And we will see you next time.